Hey everyone, my name is NearEDGE, and we're going to talk about something very interesting in this video. I, like a lot of other people, woke up this morning to see that there was a sort of rainbow-colored heart next to the YouTube logo, and, everyone knows what this means, that YouTube's trying to promote something, some kind of message, or just some kind of project they may be partnered with in some manner or fashion. Now, I went ahead and clicked on it, and I wound up seeing the #ProudToBe video. And while I understand and agree with the general idea of acceptance that the video is trying to promote, there are some fundamental flaws with the video that a lot of people in the comment section happen to notice as well. This video has received an overwhelming negative response, and I want to try to explain why that is in a way that people can really understand. I mean, when you first look at this, you have to ask yourself, what's so wrong with YouTube trying to promote a message of equality, right? People in general have no problem with LGBT. 100% on board with that. And I don't mean, everyone, because that's a harsh generalization. We know that there definitely is a minority within all Western countries that is opposed to any sort of LGBT rights because, they just simply don't agree with it. However, I want to say the overwhelming majority of people in the West are perfectly fine with LGBT. The problem is the inclusion of QA. That's where we have an issue. And I want to explain why we have an issue and what this actually means. Because like I said, a lot of people are going to look at this and immediately say that, people are just transphobic, xenophobic, whatever. And no, there's actually more to it than just that. This is an actual ideological difference. And it's not the same as people who are, just fundamentally against transgendered people, fundamentally against homosexuality. This has more to do with the idea behind the concept of gender queer, gender fluid, agender, whatever. Now, I'm doing this off the cuff. I didn't really plan out any talking points in advance. I'm just going to kind of go through this and try to express my idea and just bring up anything that I feel at the moment is relevant to explaining exactly what I mean. So let's start off with the definition of gender, which I think for social justice is best summed up by the World Health Organization. Gender refers to the socially constructed characteristics of women and men, such as norms, roles, and relationships of and between groups of women and men. It varies from society to society and can be changed. While most people are born either male or female, they are taught appropriate norms and behaviors, including how they should interact with others of the same or opposite sex within households, communities, and workplaces. When individuals or groups do not fit established gender norms, they often face stigma, discriminatory practices, or social exclusion, all of which adversely affect health. It is important to be sensitive to different identities that do not necessarily fit into binary male or female sex categories. Gender norms, roles, and relations influence people's susceptibility to different health conditions and diseases and affect their enjoyment of good mental, physical health, and well-being. They also have a bearing on people's access to and uptake of health services and on the health outcomes they experience throughout the life course. Now, I believe for most people that we essentially grew up with gender being synonymous with sex, in that it was just really a way of identifying what a person was, not who they are. The World Health Organization's definition of gender actually oversteps its bounds. Gender in this defines who you are instead of what you are. And I think that is the fundamental issue that most people actually have a point of contention with. Now, the reason that gender exists is because men and women just simply aren't the same. So it serves as a simple way of identifying things that are common for males and things that are common for females. Now, with the social justice definition of gender, it actually turns gender into a rule rather than an observation. And that's really all gender is or was ever supposed to be. Social justice essentially replaces the word stereotypes or the phrase gender stereotypes with the word gender itself, which leads to a very confusing situation. This is why we're seeing a rise of people wanting to identify as things other than male or female, because they feel trapped in what appears to be a socially constructed false dichotomy. Now, there's another thing I have a very large issue with in this definition. When individuals or groups do not fit established gender norms, they often face stigma, discriminatory practices, or social exclusion. This is a very large misinterpretation of what's actually happening. People in general have a very difficult time understanding what they're not used to. When you have someone who is, let's say, a male who isn't like most other males you know, that puts you in an odd place because you don't have a frame of reference for who that person is just simply because you've never met a person like that before. That person is an individual, and all individuals are different. The purpose of these stereotypes and generalizations is to make it easier to establish common ground with people. These stereotypes aren't supposed to be a rule. They're just common things that people have noticed for different groups of people. What you're then supposed to do from there is get to know who that individual actually is. when you have something that just simply doesn't fit what you've experienced normally, there's no good way of understanding it, and it puts people in a situation where they just feel defeated. On a broader scale, this has very little to do with xenophobia, and is just more due to people having a very difficult time understanding people they're not used to. Now, I don't fault social justice for assuming that this is due to some kind of prejudice, because when you look back through human history, we tend to have this inclination toward being hostile to what we perceive to be outsiders. As a species, need to get over that, but I think that especially in the West, we are a lot more accepting of people that we just simply don't understand. And this is something that social justice doesn't really understand goes both ways. Everyone is an individual, and every individual is different. Social justice entirely ignores the fact that some individuals will have a much harder time relating themselves back to society as a whole than others will. A great example of this is the whole transgender North Carolina bathroom issue. I heard a lot of progressives and SJWs arguing that North Carolina's government was full of transphobia and they just didn't want to grant them equality. But what I heard almost no one bring up was the fact that after a long enough period of HRT, a trans woman's body will deteriorate in the skeletal and muscular systems. This is a change so significant that a trans woman's physical strength and physical endurance will drop down to that of a biological woman. This change also applies to trans men in that they'll gain additional bone density and a stronger muscular system. As a result of that, it becomes completely unsafe for a transgendered person to be in the bathroom with the gender they transitioned from. Now, let's relay this back to gender. There is no specific idea of what a man or what a woman should be. There are ideas of what men and women typically are, and a lot of people make the appeal to nature fallacy in that people see how things typically are and assume that that's the way they're supposed to be. And this just simply isn't the case. You can be a man and 100% be what people would normally consider a woman to be. And it's not that there's a rule in place that says this is what a man should be and this is what a woman should be. It's just more that this is what people are used to experiencing with women. And if you're everything that people are used to experiencing with women, but you happen to be a man, you just need to realize that and figure out how to convey yourself in the way where most people will be able to just go, oh, I get this. And then people will be able to understand you and will want to associate themselves with you more. This is the sort of thing that I myself as an individual understand quite well because I don't really fit into any societal norms on anything really. So growing up, I kind of felt ostracized a lot because people just simply couldn't relate to me. Therefore, a lot of people didn't really want to associate with me through elementary school, middle school, and part of high school really. But it wasn't until I was in college that I really learned to be different, and I think that's what social justice needs to understand. There's a way to be different, and that you have to learn that way in order to make yourself relatable to society as a whole. The best way to go about this is by focusing on who they are rather than what they are, which is why the whole gender identity topic just makes no sense, because what you are doesn't define who you are. For the girl in the video who said that she was agendered, no, I don't think so. You're a woman. That's just what you are. That doesn't define who you are. You can be a woman and be a multitude of things. Anything that a man can be and anything that people would normally say a woman could be. But you don't have to create a new identity for yourself in order to be an individual. We're all individuals. Every single one of the over 7 billion people on the planet. And we all have to live with each other. And when you forget that, I think that you really forget what it is to be human. With each new generation, the human genome changes, and I want to say that we lose a little bit of that inherent evolutionary xenophobia. Trying to force people to be accepting of things that they don't understand isn't going to work. You need to try to figure out how to relate yourself to them in a way that they can understand, so that our inherent xenophobia doesn't manifest itself. And as that happens, it'll slowly be erased from the human genome as a whole. There are always going to be people who are just opposed to homosexuality or transgendered persons just because something inside them churns up something that just makes them feel that way. But you have to understand that that minority isn't indicative of the whole. But coming up with new genders doesn't do anything to help with those stereotypes. It just sort of reinforces them and creates even more of them along with it. The kind of acceptance that social justice wants will be achieved naturally as more gay and trans people are introduced to society and the world. This is why it makes absolutely no sense to otherize yourselves and focus on ways in which you're different, rather than just pointing out how you're the same as everyone else. And I want to reiterate that a slightly different way. The more attention you draw to who you are, the more people will be comfortable with what you are. I want to apologize because I know I've been rambling for most of this video,
But on both sides of the argument, there are two things that I need to make sure are understood. For the people who believe in the concept of multiple different genders, I want you to understand that who you are does not determine what you are. And for people on the opposite side of the argument, I need to make sure that you understand that what you are does not define who you are.